Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the shadows of Tudor England, a time of immense discovery, political drama, and a kind of magic that felt tantalizingly real. We're going to follow the bizarre and intense journey of Dive. John Dee, one of Queen Elizabeth's most trusted advisors, a genius who straddled the worlds of science and the supernatural. This isn't just a story about dusty books and strange symbols, it's about ambition, faith, and a partnership that spiraled into paranoia under command from the heavens that, well, it's a command you really have to hear to believe. Navigating this world of courtly intrigue and angelic orders is a tricky business. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see where our little community gathers from across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1581. The air in your study is thick with the scent of old paper, beeswax, and a faint, almost metallic tang from the astronomical instruments gleaming in the moonlight. You are Dr. John Dee, and this house at Mortlake, just outside the clamour of London, is your sanctuary. Your library, a collection of over 4,000 books and manuscripts, is the largest in all of England, larger than Oxford's and Cambridge's combined. From the outside, you are the pinnacle of Elizabethan success, a mathematician, an astronomer, a navigator whose charts have guided English ships toward new horizons. You've even advised the Queen herself, a trusted voice in the ear of Gloriana. You run a hand over your long, white beard, your fingers tracing the familiar lines of a life dedicated to knowledge. You look around the room. An astrolabe sits on a pedestal, a map of the known world is pinned to the wall, and stacks of your own treatises lie neatly on your great oak desk. This is the world of logic, of proof, of demonstrable fact. You helped to reform the calendar. You lectured on Euclidean geometry. You are a man of the Renaissance, a champion of reason. But as the last embers in the hearth fade to a soft orange glow, another part of you stirs. The part that finds the world of man insufficient. For all your knowledge, for all the books that surround you, you feel like you're reading footnotes to a text you can't access. The true manuscript, the one written by the hand of God himself, remains hidden. You believe the universe is a divine utterance, a complex piece of cryptography authored by the Creator. And you, John Dee, are meant to be its codebreaker. Your gaze falls upon the small, polished sphere of black obsidian resting on a velvet cushion. It's a shoestone, a gift, they say, from the Aztec lands, carried across the ocean. It is a portal, a key, a telephone to another realm. But for you, the line is silent. For months you have prayed, fasted, and stared into its dark, reflective surface, hoping for a sign, a whisper, a flicker of light from the celestial hosts. You long to speak with the angels, not for parlor tricks or cheap fortune-telling, but for true, divine wisdom. You're obsessed with the figure of Enoch from the Old Testament, the man who was said to have walked with God and learned the secrets of creation. You believe that before the Tower of Babel, humanity spoke a pure, unified language, the language of the angels, the tongue of Adam himself. Rediscovering it is your life's secret, burning ambition. But the shoestone remains stubbornly inert. It reflects only your own weary face, the candlelight, the silent room. You are a brilliant mind, perhaps the most brilliant of your age, but you lack the one crucial faculty, the sight. You can build the most advanced receiver in the world, but you can't hear the broadcast. History, of course, will look back and argue endlessly about your motives. Academics are still debating whether you were a genuine mystic on a holy quest, a man trying to reconcile faith and emerging science, or if your piety was merely a cloak for a deeper, more dangerous ambition for power that only a direct line to heaven could provide. You sigh. The sound loud in the stillness of the night. The frustration is a physical weight. All this learning, all this influence, and yet you are locked out of the one library that truly matters. You close your eyes and offer a quiet, desperate prayer. Not for gold, not for more earthly prestige, but for a guide, a key, an interpreter, Someone who can see into the shimmering darkness of the stone and tell you what lies beyond. You need a scryer, a seer, someone whose spirit is open to the whispers you are deaf to. As you open your eyes and look once more at the obsidian, you feel a strange sense of anticipation, a premonition that your solitary watch is about to end. The silence feels different now, as if it's holding its breath, waiting for a knock at the door. It doesn't take long for your prayers to be answered. Or at least for a potential answer to arrive, looking far different than you'd imagined. A few weeks later, an acquaintance, a man with connections to the swirling world of London's occult enthusiasts, brings a visitor to your home in Mortlake. The man he introduces is young, perhaps not yet 30, and goes by the name of Edward Kelly. A chaste and lean with a sharp, intelligent gaze that seems to take in everything at once. There's an intensity to him, a coiled energy that is both compelling and slightly unnerving. You notice he wears his hair a little long, covering the tops of his ears. It's a subtle thing, but your mind, trained to observe details, registers it. It's a style sometimes adopted by men who have something to hide, like the cropped ears that serve as a punishment for crimes like forgery. A fleeting thought crosses your mind: who is this man really? But you push it aside. Your need is too great to be deterred by minor suspicions. Besides, his reputation precedes him. He is said to be a skilled alchemist and, more importantly, a gifted esquire. You laid him into your study, the heart of your world. Kelly's eyes dart around the room, not with the awe of a student, but with the appraising glance of a jeweler. He seems less impressed by the sheer volume of knowledge and more interested in the value of the objects. You feel a prickle of caution. You've met men like this before, charlatans who use a few Latin phrases and a bit of showmanship to part desperate men from their coin. You are not a desperate man, you tell yourself. You are a seeker of divine truth. The distinction feels important. I am told you have an interest in communication, Kelly says, his voice smooth and confident. He gestures vaguely towards your desk, where the obsidian stone rests. I seek a dialogue with God's holy messengers, you reply, your tone formal, testing him. A pursuit of sacred knowledge, not of parlor games. Kelly smiles, a thin, knowing smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Of course, Doctor. The angels do not speak for the amusement of mortals. He then reaches into a small leather pouch at his belt and produces a tiny, grayish lump of metal. But they do provide signs of their favor. He places it on your desk. It's heavy. This was lead this morning, he says simply. Alchemy. The great work, the transmutation of base metals into gold. It is a subject of immense fascination and, you admit to yourself, the potential source of funding for your true work. Your pension from the Queen is generous, but maintaining this house, this library, and your research is a constant financial strain. Kelly also claims to possess a small quantity of a mysterious red powder, the legendary powder of projection, which can perform this very miracle. He says he and a companion dug it up from a bishop's tomb at Glastonbury, guided by a spiritual entity. The story is wild, fantastical, and yet the lump of supposed transmuted lead sits on your desk, a silent, heavy promise. Here is where the historical record gets hazy, and scholars still argue. Were you, the great intellectual, truly convinced by these claims? Or were you so consumed by your desire to speak with angels that you were willing to suspend your disbelief, to overlook the rather convenient appearance of a man who claimed to have all the answers you sought? Perhaps you saw him not as a partner, but as a tool, a strange and potentially flawed instrument that you, the master craftsman, could wield for a higher purpose. The ability to create gold is a profound gift. You say carefully, but it is earthly. I am interested in the celestial. The celestial and the earthly are connected. Dr. Kelly counters, his confidence growing. One is the key to the other. To command the elements, one must first understand the language of the heavens. I can hear it. I can see it. Through a stone, a mirror, a crystal I can show you. There it is, the offer. The very thing you prayed for. This strange, possibly disreputable young man stands in your sanctuary and claims he can open the door you've found locked and bolted. Everything in your rational, Cambridge-educated mind screams for caution. You should ask for proof, for references. You should investigate the matter of his ears. But the other part of you, the mystic who has spent countless lonely nights staring into a void of silence, is practically shouting with hope. You make a decision, a risk, but a calculated one. You will test him. You will maintain control. You will drive. John D., after all, you will not be made a fool of. You rise from your chair and gesture toward the obsidian stone. Very well, Mr. K., none of the turmoil within. The Queen's business has kept me from my studies of late. Let us see if the angels are more willing to speak with you. You lead him to the table, a sense of momentousness settling over the room. The air feels charged, as if the thousands of silent books lining the walls are leaning in, listening. For the first time in a long time, the obsidian stone does not feel like a dead weight. It feels like a stage, and the performance is about to begin. You arrange the room with a solemnity befitting a sacred rite. The table is cleared, save for the polished obsidian shoe stone, which rests on its velvet cushion like a single, dark eye. You place a white linen cloth beneath it, a symbol of the purity of your intentions. On one side, you set out your journal and a quill, freshly sharpened, ready to transcribe any celestial pronouncements. On the other side, Kelly sits, his posture relaxed, almost casual, which you find both irritating and intriguing. You are filled with a nervous, reverent energy. He seems to possess an unnerving calm, as if he is merely waiting for a business appointment to commence. To prepare, you lead a prayer. You recite the Psalms in Latin, your voice echoing slightly in the high silencing study. Your prayer is heartfelt, a genuine plea for knowledge and protection. You ask God to shield this space from any deceiving spirits, to ensure that only his holy messengers find their way into the stone. Kelly bows his head, his face unreadable. Is he praying with you, or is he simply waiting for you to finish? The thought is a distraction, and you push it away, focusing your mind. The work is what matters. Finally, the preliminaries are over. Are you ready, Mr. Kelly? You ask, your voice a low whisper. He nods, leaning forward, his gaze fixed on the stone. They are waiting, Doctor. A shiver runs down your spine despite your resolve to remain a detached observer. Kelly's breathing deepens, his eyes becoming unfocused. The atmosphere in the room thickens. The candlelight seems to dim, or perhaps it's just your perception. Your senses heightened by anticipation. You sit with your quill poised over the blank page of your diary, your knuckles white. For a long moment, there is only silence, the soft scratching of a mouse behind the wainscoting, the distant bark of a dog. You start to feel a familiar pang of disappointment. Perhaps this man is a fraud after all. Then, Kelly speaks. His voice is different. It's hollow, distant, as if coming from the bottom of a well. I see a figure, he murmurs. It shines. It is cloaked in light, but I can see its face. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Who is it? Can you ask for a name? He is pointing at the stone. He says his name is Uriel. Uriel, the archangel of light and wisdom. One of the highest order. It couldn't be more perfect. A wave of elation and vindication washes over you. You feverishly begin to write, noting the date, the time, the exact circumstances. 10 March 1582, present John D. Edward Kelly. What does he say, Mr. Kelly? What is his message? You urge, leaning forward, trying to catch every word. Kelly's eyes are wide now, staring into a space you cannot see. He says you are favored by God, that your long years of study have been noted in heaven. He says your work is pleasing to him. This is more than you could have dreamed of. It is a direct validation of your life's purpose. The long nights, the self-doubt, the quiet mockery of your more worldly colleagues, all of it melts away in the face of this angelic praise. He is showing me something, Kelly continues, his voice strained. Symbols. They are forming in the air. I do not know them. This is the moment, the key. Describe them to me, Edward. You command, your scholarly instincts taking over. Every line, every curve. Be precise. For the next hour, you are no longer a mystic, but a scribe, a linguist at the dawn of a new language. Kelly, in his trance-like state, describes a series of elegant, alien-looking characters. You draw them with a shaking hand, your mind racing. They are not Hebrew, nor Greek, nor any Enochian script you have ever theorized about. They are utterly new. Uriel, speaking through Kelly, explains that this is the true angelic alphabet, the language of creation itself, lost to mankind since the fall. He instructs you on its structure, its power. He tells you that with this knowledge, you can unlock the secrets of the cosmos. There's a curious detail that emerges during this session, a small, almost trivial point that you note in your diary. Uriel, through Kelly, mentions a specific book in your vast library, a rare Hebrew text tucked away on a high shelf. He tells you to consult a particular passage in it. The detail is so specific, so precise. How could Kelly possibly know that? H.E.S. never been in your library before today. He couldn't have seen it. For you, this is the proof. This is the proof. Overwhelming experience in reality. Of course, historians would later posit that Kelly was a master of what we'd now call cold reading. Or perhaps he had done his homework, getting information about you and your library beforehand. The debate over whether this was genuine scrying or masterful manipulation is a central question that still fascinates scholars. The session ends as abruptly as it began. Kelly slumps back in his chair, pale and sweating, as if H.E.S. just run a great distance. He blinks, looking around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. "It is gone," he says, his voice returning to normal. "The light is gone." You look down at your journal. The pages are filled with notes, with strange symbols, with the transcript of a conversation you have waited your entire life to have. Your hand aches from writing. You look at Kelly, no longer with suspicion but with a profound sense of own destiny. This is it. This is the partnership you were praying for. He is the key, the conduit, the seer. And you are the scholar, the interpreter, the one chosen to receive this divine knowledge. You have your proof. You have your angel. And you have your scryer. The path forward seems blindingly clear, illuminated by a celestial light that only the two of you can see. The foundation of a partnership that will change both your life, built on a vision in a dark stone. The days that follow are a whirlwind of feverish activity. The initial contact with the angel Uriel is not a singular event, it is the opening of a floodgate. Nearly every day, you and Kelly seclude yourselves in the study for what you now call actions, or each session follows the same solemn ritual: the prayers, the clearing of the mind, the intense focus on the shoe stone. And each time, Kelly delivers. He becomes your window to the Empyrean. He describes visions of celestial hierarchies, of burning wheels and seraphim with eyes of fire. And most importantly, he continues to receive the language. The alphabet Uriel showed you is just the beginning. Now, the angels for others soon join the conversation. Angels with names like Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael begin to dictate a celestial vocabulary. Your role is that of the master scribe. As Kelly speaks, his eyes fixed on the stone you write. You fill page after page of your diary with tables, charts, and diagrams. The angels, through Kelly, reveal the 48 keys or calls of their language. These are a series of short, powerful invocations, supposedly capable of unlocking immense power and knowledge. They are delivered backwards, letter by letter. The angels claim that to speak them forwards would be to unleash forces too great for the mortal world to bear. You are in a state of intellectual ecstasy. This is the ultimate cryptographic challenge. You listen to Kelly drone on, ITLOTAE, and you meticulously write it down, later reversing the sequence to reveal a word ATOOTI. You are building a dictionary of a language no human has spoken for millennia. You call it Angelica L, or the Enochian tongue, in honor of your biblical hero. The process is painstaking, laborious, and utterly thrilling, but there's a strange duality to your work. While you are engrossed in the divine grammar, Kelly seems more interested in the practical applications. He often interrupts the angelic dictation to ask about alchemy. Ask them where the powder of projection is hidden, he'll hiss, breaking his trance-like state. Ask them how to perfect the tincture. You find this frustrating. You are trying to comprehend the mind of God, and Kelly is asking for get-rich-quick schemes. You gently steer the conversations back to theology and the sacred language, reminding him that earthly wealth is a byproduct of divine wisdom, not its goal. This tension highlights a fundamental difference between you that will only grow over time. You are a scholar driven by an insatiable, almost pure curiosity. Kelly is something else. An opportunist. A true believer with more pragmatic concerns. Historians continue to debate the nature of Kelly's own belief. Was he a cynical con man from the start, expertly feeding you what you wanted to hear? Or did he, on some level, believe his own visions? Perhaps entering a genuine psychological state of dissociation, a trance where his own subconscious desires were projected and given the voice of angels. It's a question that likely has no simple answer. One afternoon, during a particularly intense session, a bizarre little detail emerges that you can't quite shake. The angel delivering the message, a stern entity named Mad IMI, begins to complain. Through Kelly, she speaks about the untidness of your study, about a pile of books left in a corner, and even about the quality of the wine you served at dinner the previous night. It's so mundane, so human. You're confused. Why would a celestial being, a creature of pure spirit, be concerned with dusty books and table wine? You question Kelly about it afterwards. Are you certain that was the angel speaking, Edward? It sounded rather domestic. Kelly shrugs, looking weary. I only report what I see and hear, Doctor. Perhaps the spirits that dwell in the celestial spheres are more observant of our daily lives than we imagine. You accept the explanation, but a small seed of doubt is planted. Not about the existence of the spirits, but about their nature. Or perhaps about the clarity of the channel through which their messages are coming. You record the incident faithfully in your diary, as you record everything with meticulous, scientific precision. This dedication to record-keeping is a godsend for future historians, but for you, it is simply part of the work. You are creating an archive of God's wisdom, and every detail, no matter how strange, must be preserved. For now, you push these minor inconsistencies aside. The grand tapestry of knowledge being woven before you is too magnificent to be snagged on a few loose threads. You have the language of angels. You are compiling their grammar, their syntax, their lexicon. You believe you are on the cusp of a revelation that will dwarf the work of Copernicus or Columbus. You are not just observing the heavens, you are learning to speak their language. And in your study at Mortlake, surrounded by the whispers of angels and the scratching of your quill, you feel you are the most important man in the world, the chosen vessel for a new age of understanding. Your work is not conducted in a vacuum. Whispers of the strange happenings at Mortlake begin to ripple through London. While you see it as something far more dangerous, necromancy, sorcery, the summoning of devils. In an age where the line between an astronomer and an astronomer was blurry and the fear of witchcraft was very real, your reputation becomes a double-edged sword. To some, you are a revered genius, to others, a man meddling with forbidden power. One afternoon, a royal messenger arrives. He bears the seal of the Queen. You are summoned to court. There's a knot of anxiety in your stomach as you prepare for the journey, as a rival finally succeeded in painting you as a conjurer of demons. Is your favor with Elizabeth at an end? You dress in your finest robes, hoping to project an image of sober scholarship, not a cult obsession. You are ushered into the Queen's private chambers at Richmond Palace. The air is warm and smells of beeswax and herbs. Queen Elizabeth I is there, not in her full public regalia, but in a more informal gown. She is older now, her face a mask of pale makeup, but her eyes are as sharp and intelligent as ever. With her is a small group of her most trusted advisors, including the powerful spymaster, Sir Francis Walsingham. Dr. D, the Queen says, her voice clear and commanding, we hear tales of your conversations, tales of angels and new languages. This is it, the moment of truth. You bow deeply. Your Majesty, I have been blessed. God has seen fit to open a channel of communication, to reveal a portion of his divine wisdom that has been lost to man. You can feel the skepticism in the room. Walsingham, a man who trusts in networks of human spies, not celestial ones, watches you with a cool, appraising gaze. You realize you must be careful. You cannot simply rave about angelic visitations. You need to frame this in a way they can understand, a way that is useful to the crown. This is not for personal gain, Your Majesty, you continue, choosing your words with precision. This is a tool, a means of knowledge that can serve England. The angels have spoken of the future of your reign, of the designs of your enemies, of the destiny of this great nation. This piques their interest. The Queen leans forward slightly. And what do they say of our enemies? What of Spain? At this moment you are grateful for Kelly's more pragmatic inquiries. While you were focused on theology, the angels had indeed offered tidbits of geopolitical intelligence, often vague, but potent nonetheless. You recount some of the pronouncements, warnings of Spanish plots, assurances of England's ultimate divine protection, and predictions of a future where England would be the head of a new, reformed Christian empire. You then move to what you feel is safer, more demonstrable ground. You unroll a chart you've prepared. It's a beautiful, hand-drawn diagram of the angelic alphabet. You explain its structure, its internal logic, its divine origins. You present it not as magic, but as a form of sacred cryptography, a higher science. You are not a magician, you imply. You are a codebreaker, and the code just happens to be authored by God. This is a performance of a lifetime. You are using all your scholarly authority, your long history of loyal service, and your genuine, fervent belief to sell this extraordinary story. And it works. The Queen is fascinated. She is a product of the Renaissance, a believer in signs and portents, but also a shrewd and practical ruler. The idea of a private, celestial intelligence network is undeniably appealing. There's a curious moment, a bit of historical trivia, where she asks to see the shoe stone. You hadn't brought it with you, but you promised to show her. A few days later, she makes a surprise visit to your house at Mortlake, an incredible honor. She sweeps through your library, genuinely impressed, and you and Kelly perform a brief, impromptu action for her. Kelly reports seeing an angel who confirms Elizabeth's divine right to rule. It is a masterful piece of supernatural politics. The Queen does not officially endorse your work, that would be far too dangerous politically. But she gives you her tacit approval and, most importantly, her protection. The rumors of necromancy are quieted when a mob, incited by your rivals, later threatens to burn your house and your precious library. It is the Queen's authority that disperses them. You leave the palace feeling vindicated and emboldened. You have successfully woven your secret spiritual quest into the fabric of national security and royal destiny. It's a move that many historians see as a brilliant strategic play, securing your funding and freedom to continue. Others view it more cynically, suggesting you were now using angelic prophecy to flatter the regime, turning your divine contacts into a tool of the state. But for you, in that moment, it is all one and the same. You believe with all your heart that England's destiny and God's plan are intertwined. By serving one, you are serving the other. You return to Mortlake not just as a seeker of knowledge, but as a man with a royal and divine mandate. The partnership with Kelly is no longer a private obsession. It feels like a matter of state, and the stakes have just been raised impossibly high. While you bask in the glow of royal favor, a different kind of drama is unfolding within the walls of your own home. The constant presence of Edward Kelly has shifted the very atmosphere of your household. He is no longer just a visitor, he is a fixture, the axis around which your daily life now revolves. And no one feels this more keenly than your wife Jane. Jane D is a stark contrast to the ethereal, often demanding voices that now fill your study. She is grounded, practical, and deeply devoted to you and your growing family. She was a lady in waiting at court before she married you, a woman of good standing who now finds her home transformed into a strange mystical laboratory. At first, she was likely supportive, if a little bewildered. You, her brilliant, respected husband, had found a new passion. But as the days turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, her support gives way to a quiet, mounting anxiety. You are consumed. When you are not in the study with Kelly, you are at your desk, poring over the angelic transcripts, trying to decipher the syntax of the heavens. You speak of your redolent mad I as if they are old colleagues. You are physically present at the dinner table, but your mind is elsewhere, lost in celestial diagrams. Jane tries to talk to you about household accounts, about the children's lessons, about a leak in the roof, and you listen with a distracted air. Your thoughts a million miles away in a realm she cannot enter. Her primary source of concern is Kelly himself. She does not trust him. Where you see a gifted seer, a flawed but necessary vessel for God's work, Jane sees something else. She sees a man who enjoys the comforts of your home without contributing to its upkeep. She sees the way he looks at the silver, the way he drinks your best wine. She hears the whispers and gossip from the servants about his arrogance and his temper. One evening, after a particularly long and exhausting session with Kelly, Jane approaches you in the quiet of your bedchamber. The children are asleep. The house is still. "John," she begins, her voice gentle but firm. "I worry about this path. I worry about that man, Kelly." "Jane, we have discussed this," you say, a touch of weariness in your voice. "He is an instrument, a difficult one, I grant you, but a necessary one. Think of what we are achieving. We are speaking with angels. Are we?" she asks quietly, "or are we just listening to him? How can you be so certain, John? He holds you captive. He has more of your time and your heart than I or your children do." Her words are small, sharp pain. You know there is truth in them. You have been distant, but you see it as a necessary sacrifice. Great men who change the world, must make sacrifices. You try to explain this to her to make her see the monumental importance of the work. "This is for all of us, my dear," you say, taking her hand. "The knowledge we gain will build a better world for our children. The favor of the Queen, which this work has secured, protects us all." But Jane is not so easily placated. Her concerns are not just about your distraction. They are about the nature of the work itself. She is a pious woman, and she fears you are treading on dangerous ground. The Bible warns of deceiving spirits, John. It warns of false prophets. What if these voices are not from God? What if they are leading you astray? This is a fear you have wrestled with yourself in the darkest hours of the night. It is the central, terrifying question at the heart of your entire enterprise. You have built intellectual bulwarks against it, the internal consistency of the angelic language, the verifiable details, the theological soundness of most of the messages. But Jane's simple, direct question bypasses all your scholarly defenses and strikes at the core of your faith. There is a strange, sad piece of historical evidence that gives a voice to Jane's anxieties. In your own diaries, amongst the complex angelic scripts and political prophecies, you record some of these domestic tensions. You note Jane's pleas and your own attempts to reassure her. You even record asking the angels directly about her doubts. Their response, delivered through Kelly, is swift and chilling. They chastise her for her lack of faith. They command her to be obedient and supportive of the divine work. They essentially tell her to be quiet and trust her husband. For a modern reader, this is a deeply uncomfortable moment. It looks like a clear case of manipulation, of Kelly using his angelic mouthpiece to silence a dissenting voice and shore up his own position within the household. But for you, in that moment, it is a divine injunction. It is God's will. How can your wife's earthly fears stand against a direct command from heaven? It creates an impossible dilemma for you, caught between your loyalty to your wife and your obedience to what you believe is God's word. You try to be gentle. You show Jane the angelic message, explaining that even heaven is invested in her compliance. You are trying to comfort her, but the act itself only deepens the chasm between you. You are asking her to trust the very system she fears. You are using the voice of an angel to overrule the instincts of your wife. The quiet harmony of your marriage is being sacrificed at the altar of the shoe stone, and the two households at Mortlake, the celestial one in your study and the terrestrial one in the rest of the house, are heading for a collision. The tacit protection of the Queen gives you a certain amount of breathing room, but England is becoming a confined space for your grand ambitions. The whispers of necromancy haven't vanished entirely, and your academic rivals are relentless. More pressingly, you feel your work has reached a plateau. The angels, through Kelly, are becoming more insistent that their wisdom is not just for England, but for all of Christendom. They speak of a universal reformation, a new spiritual monarchy that would unite Europe under one divine philosophy, yours. It's a seductive idea, and it dovetails perfectly with the growing restlessness in Kelly. He is tired of the relative obscurity of Mortlake. He craves a grander stage, more powerful patrons, and, you suspect, more opportunities to practice his beloved alchemy. The angelic messages begin to hint that your destiny lies on the continent. They speak of a powerful prince in Poland who is a seeker of truth and would be receptive to your revelations. The decision to leave England is monumental. It means uprooting your entire family, leaving behind your home, your security, and the largest private library in the country. It is a leap of faith based entirely on the words spoken by Kelly as he stares into a stone. Jane is beside herself with worry. To her, this is not a divine mission, it is a wild goose chase, dragging her and her children across Europe at the whim of a man she despises. Her protests, however, are now framed as a lack of faith, a spiritual failing. The angels have commanded it, and you are resolved to obey. In the spring of 1583 you set sail. The scene at the docks must have been a strange one. You, the aging, white-bearded scholar, filled with a sense of divine purpose, your anxious wife, Jane, trying to keep track of your young children, Arthur and Catherine, amidst the chaos of departure, and of course, Edward Kelly, travelling with his own new wife, Joan. The two families, bound together by this strange, supernatural quest, form a small, self-contained universe of faith, tension, and codependence. Your destination is Poland, to the court of a nobleman named Albert Halsky, a powerful and vastly wealthy, but also deeply indebted, Palatine of Syridiz. The angels had identified him by name, a fact she found astonishingly prescient. To a historian, it seems more likely that Halsky, a known dabbler in the occult, had heard of you during a recent visit to England and perhaps even made contact. The angelic command might have been a convenient echo of a very worldly invitation. The debate on whether the angels led you to Halsky, or if Halsky's invitation was simply framed as an angelic command, is a classic chicken and egg problem of your story. The journey itself is arduous. Sea travel is perilous, and overland travel is slow and uncomfortable. You are no longer a young man, and the constant motion, the strange beds, the unfamiliar food, it all takes a toll. You are sustained by your sense of mission. You spend the long hours of travel in deep discussion with Kelly, reviewing the angelic transcripts, planning how you will present your divine knowledge to a new and powerful audience. You finally arrive at Halsky's castle, a formidable fortress in Yale, and that feels a world away from the gentle green of Mortlake. You are received with great honor. Halsky is a captivating figure, a man of immense charm and intellectual curiosity. He is fascinated by your work and, more importantly, desperate for a solution to his financial woes. He is less interested in the theology of the angelic language and far more interested in the alchemical promises Kelly has been whispering about. He hopes you are the key to turning his lead mines into gold mines. And so, the actions begin anew. In a grand, cold chamber of a Polish castle, the ritual is repeated. You, Kelly, and your new patron, Halsky, gather around the shoe stone. The angels or Kelly are smart enough to play to their new audience. The messages are now filled with prophecies about Halsky's glorious future, how he is a chosen vessel of God, how he might even be destined for the vacant Polish throne. It's a potent mix of spiritual revelation and political flattery. He lavishes you with resources, funding your research and housing your families. But as the weeks turn into months, a familiar pattern emerges. The angelic prophecies are grand, but the alchemical results are non-existent. Kelly performs dramatic, smoky experiments that consume a great deal of Halsky's resources but produce no gold. The angels always have an excuse. The ritual was not pure enough. The participants' faith was wavering. More prayer and patience were needed. You are caught in the middle. Your primary interest remains the sacred knowledge, but you are dependent on Halsky's patronage, and that patronage is dependent on Kelly's alchemical promises. You find yourself in the uncomfortable position of having to vouch for Kelly, to reassure your host that a breakthrough is just around the corner, all while your own private doubts about Kelly's alchemical skills, if not his spiritual ones, continue to grow. You have left the relative safety of England for a precarious existence as a traveling mystic. Your fate and the well-being of your family are now tied to a foreign prince and the increasingly unpredictable visions of Edward Kelly. The grand European tour has begun, but you are already starting to realize that you are not the one holding the map. Your time under the patronage of Albert Askai in Poland proves to be a glittering, but ultimately hollow success. You are the talk of the court. Nobles and scholars travel to witness the famed doctor, and his miraculous esquire. During the scenes, Kelly puts on a spectacular performance. He describes angels of breathtaking majesty, delivers prophecies that seem to confirm Poland's pivotal role in the coming spiritual war against the forces of darkness, and speaks with an authority that captivates your host. You are treated like a visiting sage. You are given luxurious quarters, your family is well fed, and your intellectual ego is stroked. For a brief period, it feels as though the move from England was a resounding success. You engage in long debates with Polish scholars, dazzling them with your knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and of course, your exclusive insights from the angelic realm. You present the Enochian alphabet as a divine gift, a key to unlocking a universal understanding that transcends the bitter religious divides of Europe. However, beneath the surface of this apparent triumph, the foundations are cracking. His patience, and more importantly his treasury, is beginning to run dry. The grand prophecies about him becoming King of Poland have not materialized. The political climate shifted. Another candidate was chosen, and Askai is left looking slightly foolish. The true pressure point, however, is the alchemy. Kelly has built a small laboratory and has been conducting endless, expensive experiments. The air in your section of the castle is often thick with acrid smoke and the smell of sulfur. But the only thing being transmuted is Asky's silver coin into worthless chemical sludge. The relationship with your patron grows strained. His questions become more pointed. The audiences become less frequent. You can feel the warmth of his initial welcome turning into a cold, polite suspicion. The angels conveniently have an answer for this. Through Kelly, they explain that Asky's faith is impure, that his heart is to set on worldly gain. They declare him unworthy of receiving the ultimate secret of transmutation. It's a classic blame the customer strategy, and it serves to absolve you and Kelly of any failure while simultaneously severing the relationship. The departure from Asky's court is far less grand than your arrival. You are not cast out, but the patronage has clearly ended. You are now adrift in Central Europe with your two families, a collection of strange angelic diaries, and a dwindling supply of money. This leads you to your next great hope, the city of Prague, the jewel of Bohemia, the seat of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. Rudolf is perhaps the most famously eccentric and intellectually curious monarch in all of Europe. His court at Prague Castle is a magnet for astronomers, artists, alchemists, and mystics from across the continent. It is the home of Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler. If there is any place in the world that would welcome your unique blend of science and revelation, it is here. The journey to Prague is fraught with anxiety. You are essentially a freelance mystic now, traveling on reputation alone. Upon your arrival, securing an audience with the reclusive emperor is no easy task. You must navigate the complex and suspicious court, a nest of intrigue where every scholar and artist is vying for the emperor's attention and patronage. You use your old connections, your scholarly fame, and every bit of influence you can muster. Finally, you succeed. You and Kelly are granted an audience with Rudolf II. The scene is one of immense tension and potential. You are ushered into the emperor's private chambers, a space filled with priceless art, strange mechanical contraptions, and astronomical charts. Rudolf is a melancholy, intelligent man, deeply intrigued by the occult and the search for the philosopher's stone. You present your case, much as you did for Queen Elizabeth, emphasizing the scientific and theological importance of your angelic communications. You speak of a universal harmony, a divine plan for mankind. Kelly, for his part, performs a brief scrying session. The angel that appears is, of course, full of praise for the emperor's wisdom and piety. A bizarre, and perhaps apocryphal, story from this period claims that Kelly, in a moment of alchemical showmanship, actually performed a successful transmutation for the emperor, cutting a piece of metal in half and turning one part to gold with his mysterious red powder. Historians still debate whether this event actually happened, if it was a clever sleight of hand or simply a legend that grew up around your visit. Regardless, the outcome is not what you hoped for. Rudolf is intrigued, but he is also cautious. He is under immense pressure from the papal nuncio, the Pope's ambassador in Prague, who views your work with extreme suspicion. The nuncio, Germanica Mars Spina, sees you not as a divine messenger, but as a Protestant heretic performing dangerous magic. He begins to work against you, spreading rumors and warning the emperor that associating with you could be spiritually and politically dangerous. The emperor, caught between his curiosity and political prudence, keeps you at arm's length. He does not offer you the patronage you so desperately need. Once again, you find yourself in a precarious position, your reputation preceding you, but bringing as much suspicion as it does fame. You are in the most magically minded city in Europe, at the court of the most occult-obsessed monarch. And yet, you are still on the outside looking in. The door to security and success remaining stubbornly closed. Adrift in the sea of intrigue that is Rudolf I's Prague, a significant and troubling shift occurs in your partnership. The focus of your joint enterprise begins to move decisively away from your passion, the angelic conversations, and towards Kelly's alchemy. While you manage to keep Kelly's materialistic urges in check back in England, here in Prague, the obsession takes over completely. Prague is the world's capital of alchemy. Every other shadowy back alley seems to house a furnace and a hopeful charlatan promising to turn lead into gold. Kelly is in his element. He sees himself not as a mere esquire anymore, but as a master alchemist on the verge of the great work. His reputation, partly built on the fantastical story of the Glastonbury powder and partly on his own charismatic self-promotion, begins to precede him. Wealthy merchants and down on their luck nobles, eager for a magical solution to their financial problems, begin to seek him out. You watch this transformation with a growing sense of unease. Your days are no longer structured around the solemn, prayerful preparations for the angelic seances. Instead, they are filled with the acrid stench of chemical experiments. Kelly, not you, is now the one holding court, entertaining potential investors with grand promises. He speaks less of Uriel and more of mercury and sulfur, less of the Enochian keys and more of the philosopher's stone. The angelic actions still happen, but their character changes. They become less frequent and more functional. You still dutifully record the messages, but you notice they now often serve Kelly's purposes. When a potential patron expresses doubt, an angel conveniently appears in the shoestone to vouch for Kelly's abilities. When an experiment fails, a spirit explains it away as a necessary trial of faith. Now seem to be acting as Kelly's celestial business managers. This period is marked by a deep internal conflict for you. On one hand, you are still utterly dependent on Kelly. He is your only link to the spiritual realm you so desperately want to explore. Without his scrying, you are just a scholar with a library of incomprehensible notes. On the other hand, you can't ignore the vulgar turn your divine mission has taken. You try to argue with him to steer him back to the true work. Edward, we are squandering a divine gift, you might say one evening, after another day wasted on smoky, fruitless experiments. We were chosen to receive the language of God, not to act as common puffers for gullible noblemen. Kelly, his face smudged with soot, would likely retort with a weary cynicism. And who pays for the food on our family's tables, doctor? The language of God. It is your obsession, and I have served it faithfully. But it does not buy bread. Gold does. The emperor and these lords do not care for angelic grammar. They care for tangible results. One successful projection is worth 1,000 of your holy word. This argument strikes at the heart of your codependent relationship. You have the intellectual framework and the scholarly legitimacy, but he has the power, the ability to see, to perform, to deliver the miracles. And he is increasingly aware that his power is the one that brings in the money. This power shift is subtle but absolute. In England, he was your employee, your instrument. In Prague, you are beginning to feel like his aging, slightly irrelevant partner, the respectable academic front for his far more lucrative and far more dubious enterprise. Historians are fascinated by this phase. Some see it as the moment the mask fully slipped, where Kelly's true nature as a confidence man took center stage. Others offer a more complex psychological reading. Perhaps Kelly, surrounded by the intense pressures and high stakes of Prague's alchemical scene, began to believe his own hype. Perhaps the line between conning others and conning himself had completely blurred. The human mind's capacity for self-deception is a theme that runs deep through your story. One of the strangest pieces of trivia from this time is Kelly's supposed creation of an elixir of life. He would claim to have a tincture that could promote health and extend youth. He would provide you, his older partner, with doses of it. You, a man of science, a brilliant mathematician, would faithfully take them. It's a poignant imagery, the great drive. D. Accepting a mysterious liquid from a man you increasingly distrust, hoping it holds the key to vitality, just as you hope his visions hold the key to the cosmos. It perfectly encapsulates your predicament. Your reliance on Kelly for access to hidden knowledge, whether it be heavenly or chemical, forces you to suspend your own better judgment. The sacred quest for the language of Adam has been sidetracked into a grimy, desperate hunt for gold. The celestial harmony you dreamed of has been replaced by the clatter and smoke of a third-rate alchemist's workshop. You are losing control of the narrative, and a dreadful feeling begins to creep in that this entire European venture, this grand spiritual crusade, is spiraling into a fraud, and you are too deep in it to find your way out. As the focus of your partnership shifts to Kelly's alchemical ambitions, the nature of the angelic communications undergoes a dark and unsettling transformation. The benevolent, wise, and patient voices of angels like Uriel and Raphael seem to fade into the background. In their place, new and more aggressive entities come to the forefront. The primary voice you now hear, channeled through Kelly, is that of the spirit who calls herself Mad I. Mad I is a stark departure from the majestic archangels of your early sessions. She is described by Kelly not as a being of pure light, but as a small girl, sometimes playful, sometimes petulant, and often terrifyingly harsh. Her messages are no longer filled with elegant theological discourse. The sessions become ordeals. Use it with your quill ready to record divine wisdom, and instead, you are subjected to a tirade of criticism. Mad I, through Kelly, berates you for your smallest perceived failings. She scolds you for a fleeting moment of doubt during a prayer. She chastises you for questioning Kelly's methods. She condemns Jane's persistent lack of faith with increasing venom. The shoe stone, once a source of enlightenment and comfort, has become a portal for judgment and psychological pressure. One afternoon, during a particularly grim action, Mad I delivers a chilling ultimatum. The wellspring of our knowledge will be sealed, Kelly recites in a flat, cold voice, channeling the spirit. The favor of God will be withdrawn from you, for your hearts are not pure. You harbor doubt. You resist. This cannot continue. The message hangs in the air of the small, stuffy room in Prague. The threat is absolute. Conform completely, or be cut off from the divine source that has become the entire purpose of your existence. It is a tool of immense psychological leverage. Any attempt on your part to exercise critical thought or to question the increasingly erratic path Kelly is taking is now framed not as prudence, but as a sinful act that endangers the entire holy mission. You're trapped. You try to reason, to push back, but to question is the role of the scholar. You argue, not just with Kelly, but with the voice in the stone. God gave us reason to use it, to separate the true from the false. The response, via Kelly, is swift and brutal. Your reason is human and flawed. It is a spitterbear of pride. You are commanded to have faith. Blind faith. The faith of a child. This demand for the suspension of your critical faculties is the most difficult thing you have ever faced. You are John D., a man whose entire life has been a testament to the power of the intellect. And now, you are being told that your greatest asset is your greatest obstacle. The historical debate around Mad I is particularly intense. Was Mad I a genuine supernatural entity, perhaps a lower order, more volatile spirit? Or was she a complete fabrication of Kelly's, a sock puppet personality he used to browbeat you into submission? Some psychological interpretations suggest Mad I could have been a manifestation of Kelly's unfractured psyche, perhaps even a projection of his own inner child, a persona that allowed him to be demanding and capricious, without taking direct responsibility. This spirit could say things that Edward Kelly, the junior partner, perhaps felt he could not. A particularly bizarre and telling detail from this period involves the angelic instructions on how to pray. Mad I begins to dictate long rambling and often contradictory prayers. She insists on specific, almost obsessive-compulsive rituals that must be performed perfectly for the communication to continue. You spend hours transcribing these, trying to find the divine logic within them, while the simpler, more heartfelt piety of your earlier years is dismissed as inadequate. It feels less like spiritual guidance and more like a series of arbitrary loyalty tests. The pressure is taking a visible toll on you. Your letters from this time are filled with a sense of weariness and anxiety. You feel yourself being worn down, your will eroded by the constant hectoring of the spirits, and the unyielding confidence of Kelly. The joy of the quest is gone, replaced by a grim sense of duty and a growing fear of failure. The angels, once your guides to enlightenment, have become your taskmasters, their voices sharp and unforgiving. The line between divine command and psychological manipulation has blurred to the point of being invisible. You are being systematically isolated, your judgment undermined, and your obedience demanded. The stage is being set for a final, terrible test of your faith, a command so extreme it will force you to confront the true nature of the powers you have been conversing with. The relentless pressure from the spirits, the failures in alchemy, and the precariances of your life in Prague begin to eat away at the very foundation of your partnership with Kelly. The seed of doubt, planted long ago by Jane's worries and the mundane pronouncements of the angels, begins to sprout in the fertile ground of your exhaustion and anxiety. For the first time, you start to seriously, deeply question the entire enterprise. The trigger is not one single event, but 1,000 tiny cuts. It's the way Kelly's trances sometimes seem a little too convenient, beginning just as a wealthy patron arrives or ending abruptly when you ask a difficult question. It's the way the angelic messages, which you have transcribed with such care, seem to contradict each other over time. An angel might praise a certain course of action one week, only for mad I to condemn it the next. You spend long nights awake, long after the rest of your household is asleep, poring over your own diaries. You are a man who believes in patterns, in logic, in systems. You are trying to apply that logic to the celestial data you've collected. You cross-reference dates, names, and prophecies, searching for the divine harmony you believe must be there. Instead, you find inconsistencies. You find a pattern not of divine wisdom, but of human desire, specifically Kelly's desires. The thought is a venomous one, and you try to fight it. To admit that Kelly might be a fraud would be to admit that you, Dr. Dave. John D., the Queen's advisor, the great intellectual of your age, have been a fool. It would mean that the last several years of your life, the sacrifice of your fortune, the uprooting of your family, the alienation of your wife, have all been for nothing, a grand illusion built on the words of a charlatan. The psychological cost of such an admission is almost too high to contemplate. One evening, you decide to confront him, not with accusations, but with scholarly inquiry. You approach him with one of your journals open. Edward, you begin, your voice calm and measured. I have been reviewing the transcripts. On the 12th of May, the angel we identified as NALVH stated that the path to the Emperor's favor was through the Baron von Rosenberg. Yet today, mad I claimed that any association with the Baron would bring ruin upon us. How can both be true? Are the heavens in disagreement? You expect a theological explanation, another lecture on the mysterious ways of God. Instead, Kelly's reaction is one of pure volatile anger. His face flushes, and his eyes narrow. You dare to question them. He hisses, his voice slow and dangerous. After all I have shown you, after all the risks I have taken, your pathetic, bookish mind cannot comprehend the magnitude of what we are doing. Your doubt is the poison, Doctor. It is what is blocking the flow, what is angering them. He snatches the diary from your hands, his disrespect for your life's work a physical blow. This is not a schoolboy's exercise in logic. This is a matter of absolute faith. Either you believe or you do not. The ferocity of his response is telling. It is not the reaction of a fellow seeker of truth, but of a man whose authority has been challenged. He is not defending the angels, he is defending himself. The line between Kelly and the spirits has collapsed entirely. An accusation against one is an accusation against the other. This confrontation is a turning point. The trust between you is irrevocably broken. You may still need to work together, bound by circumstance and shared secrets, but the illusion of a partnership of equals is gone. You now see him not as a window, but as a filter, a flawed and potentially manipulative lens that colors everything you see. This is a lonely, unterrifying realization. You are in a foreign land, with no patron and dwindling funds. The one person on whom your entire project depends is a man you can no longer trust. You have no one to confide in. To admit your doubts to Jane would be to admit she was right all along, a humiliation your pride can barely stomach. To admit them to anyone else would be to risk accusations of fraud yourself. Historians often wonder why you didn't just walk away at this point. Why did you continue the partnership? The answer is complex and speaks to the powerful psychology of belief and commitment. You had invested too much to simply abandon the project. This phenomenon, what modern psychologists call sunk cost fallacy, was at play. You had sacrificed everything for this quest. To give up now would be to accept a total loss. Furthermore, a part of you, despite everything, still wanted to believe. The hope that there was some genuine signal amidst the noise of Kelly's manipulations was a powerful law. Perhaps he was a fraud vessel, a cracked lens, but maybe, just maybe, some real light was still getting through. You retreat into a state of watchful, weary suspicion. You continue to attend the seances to transcribe the messages, but you do so with a heavy heart and a critical hidden eye. You are now a prisoner of your own creation, forced to play your part in a drama you no longer believe in, waiting for the final act to unfold. Despite the papal nuncio's opposition and the emperor's cautious distance, your presence in Prague eventually attracts the attention of a major player in the Bohemian court, the powerful and obscenely wealthy nobleman, Wilhelm of Rosenberg. Rosenberg is a man of immense influence, a leading figure in the kingdom, and, like so many of his contemporaries, a man with a deep and abiding interest in the occult and, particularly, alchemy. Your introduction to Rosenberg is a lifeline. He offers you unkelly patronage, moving you from your cramped lodgings in Prague to his magnificent castle and estate at Trebin in southern Bohemia. The castle is a world unto itself, a sprawling complex of palaces, gardens, and, most importantly for Kelly, a state-of-the-art alchemical laboratory. For a time it seems your fortunes have turned. You are once again under the protection of a powerful lord, your families are safe, and the work can continue. But the move to Trebin solidifies the shift in power between you and Kelly. This is no longer your project. The patronage is based almost entirely on Rosenberg's belief in Kelly's alchemical prowess. You are seen as the respectable, scholarly companion, the drive, whose name lends an air of legitimacy to the proceedings. But Kelly is the star of the show. The seances continue, but they are now almost entirely geared towards the new patron. The angels, speaking through Kelly, deliver messages tailor-made for Rosenberg's ears. They praise his piety, offer him cryptic advice on political matters, and above all, assure him that he has been chosen by God to be the patron of the great work. They promise that under his sponsorship, the Philosopher's Stone is finally within reach. You participate in these sessions, but you feel like a ghost at the feast. You dutifully transcribe the angelic messages, but the act, which once filled you with such divine purpose, now feels hollow, almost sacrilegious. You are recording what you increasingly believe to be a calculated performance designed to keep your rich host happy. You look at Rosenberg, his face wrapped with belief as he listens to Kelly's angelic pronouncements, and you see a reflection of your own former self, daemon of power and intellect, captivated by a promise of secret knowledge. There's a subtle but significant detail that historians have noted from your diaries during this period. The language used by the angels begins to incorporate more and more alchemical terminology. The spiritual and the metallurgical are becoming hopelessly entangled. A message about the purification of the soul might be delivered using the language of distilling mercury. This blending of vocabularies is a source of fascination for scholars who debate whether it represents a genuine attempt to create a unified spiritual scientific theory or, more cynically, if it was just Kelly's own alchemical obsessions bleeding into his angelic performances. The environment at Trebin is one of intense, almost feverish expectation. Rosenberg has invested a fortune in Kelly's work. The laboratory is constantly running, consuming vast quantities of charcoal, exotic minerals, and pressure on Kelly to produce a tangible result is immense. And when the pressure on Kelly is immense, the pressure on you, his partner, becomes unbearable. You find yourself trapped in a gilded cage. You are living in luxury, your children are safe, but you have no agency. You are a passenger on a ship captained by a man you don't trust, heading towards a destination you no longer believe in. The intellectual ferment of Prague has been replaced by the focused, obsessive atmosphere of Rosenberg's court. Your own scholarly pursuits, your work on mathematics and navigation, are all but forgotten. Your entire identity has been subsumed into this singular, all-consuming project. The relationship between you and Kelly becomes purely functional, stripped of any remaining warmth or intellectual camaraderie. You speak when necessary, during the scenes or in the presence of your patron, but in private, a heavy silence often hangs between you. He is busy with his laboratory and his networking among Rosenberg's circle. You retreat into your books and your increasingly troubled thoughts. You are two men sharing a terrible secret, the secret of your mutual dependence and your shattered trust. The grand stage of a European castle only serves to highlight the deep, personal isolation you now feel. You are closer than ever to the heart of power and wealth, yet further than ever from the truth you set out to find. Life within the opulent but claustrophobic confines of Trebon Castle slowly erodes the fragile peace between the two families. The constant pressure, the shared isolation in a foreign land, and the deeply dysfunctional dynamic of your partnership with Kelly create a toxic environment that inevitably spills over into your domestic lives. The tension is no longer confined to the study or the laboratory. It is at the dinner table, in the hallways, and in the quiet, anxious glances between your wife and his. Jane, your wife, has been on this journey for years now. Her initial anxieties have hardened into a quiet, simmering resentment. She has watched you sacrifice your reputation, your fortune, and your presence as a husband and father at the altar of Kelly's visions. She maintains a veneer of dutiful obedience, as the angels commanded, but her disapproval is a constant, unspoken presence. She focuses her energy on the children, creating a small pocket of normalcy amidst the strange and stressful world you've dragged them into. She sees Kelly not as a prophet, but as a parasite who has attached himself to your family, and she loathes him with a silent, steadfast passion. On the other side of this domestic Cold War is Kelly's wife, Joan. Joan is a younger woman, caught in her own difficult circumstances. Her relationship with Kelly is volatile and tumultuous. He is a difficult, arrogant, and often neglectful husband, consumed by his own ambitions. The two women, Jane and Joan, are bound by their shared, strange predicament, but there is little warmth or solidarity between them. They are rivals in a sense, for resources, for status within the household, and for the attention of the two men whose bizarre partnership dictates their entire existence. The children are caught in the crossfire. Your children, Arthur, Catherine, and the younger ones born during your travels, are being raised in this atmosphere of mystical obsession and simmering hostility. Their playground is the courtyard of a bohemian castle, their daily reality shaped by their father's strange work. They likely see Kelly as a menacing uncle figure, the man who steals their father away for hours on end for secret, adult business they cannot understand. Historians often have to read between the lines of your diaries to piece together this domestic drama, as you were often more focused on celestial matters than household ones. But you do record moments of friction with startling honesty. You note arguments between yourself and Jane, her tears and your frustrated attempts to justify your continued association with Kelly. You even record Kelly's own domestic disputes, sometimes with a kind of detached, scholarly curiosity. A particularly telling and strange detail you record is a séance where the angel Mad I directly intervenes in a squabble between Jane and Joan. The spirit, speaking through Kelly, doles out rebukes and commands to the two women, telling them how to behave, how to manage their households, and demanding they live in harmony for the sake of the great work. Imagine the scene: two women, likely arguing over something as mundane as laundry or kitchen supplies, are forced to sit in a darkened room while Kelly, in a trance, channels a spirit child who acts as a supernatural marriage counselor and domestic arbitrator. This is a powerful example of how the mystical was used to control the personal. It's a tactic that leaves no room for private life or personal autonomy. Every aspect of your existence, down to the relationship between your wives, is now subject to the scrutiny and judgment of the angels. It's a level of control that is absolute and deeply invasive. This constant, shared tension strains the last remaining threads of your partnership with Kelly. You are no longer just intellectual rivals, you are the heads of two separate, competing family units, trapped together in a gilded cage. Every shared meal is an exercise in diplomacy. Every interaction is layered with years of unspoken resentment and suspicion. The grand quest for divine knowledge has devolved into a grim, dysfunctional family drama, played out on the stage of a foreign castle, with the fate of everyone involved hanging on the next pronouncement from a voice in a stone. The pressure cooker environment of Trebon is intensifying, and it is about to reach its breaking point. The atmosphere at Trebon grows heavier, charged with the weight of failed experiments and your patron's thinning patience. Rosenberg, for all his generosity, is a practical man. He has seen no gold, and the celestial promises are starting to sound repetitive. The tension is a palpable thing, a low hum of anxiety that permeates the castle walls. Kelly feels it most acutely. He has become jumpy, irritable, his usual arrogance fraying at the edges. He knows he is running out of time. It is Kelly who insists on the next action. He doesn't ask, he tells you it's necessary. The angels are angry, he says. When you gather in the chamber you use for scrying, the mood is not one of holy reverence, but of grim desperation. Jane and Joan are not present. This is a crisis meeting for the core members, you, Kelly, and your patron, Rosenberg, who sits with his arms crossed, his expression a mask of polite but weary skepticism. Kelly begins the ritual, but his usual smooth transition into a trance seems forced and jerky. When he finally speaks, the voice he channels is not the childish petulance of mad I, but a new, booming, and terrifyingly cold intelligence. It does not introduce itself. It simply begins its indictment. You have been weighed and you have been found wanting, the voice declares, the sound seeming to press down on you from the ceiling. The vessel is unclean. The work is corrupted. The voice, through Kelly, systematically dissects your failures. It attacks Rosenberg for his impatience, for his heart of lead that seeks only earthly treasure and not divine wisdom. It accuses him of tainting the holy work with greed. You see Rosenberg flinch, his face hardening. Then, the voice turns on you. And you, the scribe, it thunders. You who were chosen to record our words. Your heart is a nest of vipers. You harbor doubt. You question our messengers. You apply your pathetic human reason to the architecture of heaven. Your doubt is a fog that chokes this channel. The accusation is devastating. It takes your deepest, most secret fear, your rational skepticism, and frames it as a spiritual crime. You feel a wave of cold dread. You are being blamed for the failure, your intellect identified as the original sin. But then comes the most surprising turn. The voice turns its fury upon its own conduit, Kelly, and the seer, his eyes are clouded with desire. His spirit is a muddy pool reflecting his own ambitions for fame and gold. He listened with an ear tuned to the clink of coin, not the music of the spheres. He too is unworthy. This is a masterstroke of blame shifting. By indicting everyone in the room, including himself, Kelly or the entity he's channeling creates a crisis of universal failure. No single person is at fault, you are all collectively failing God. And if you are all at fault, you must all work together to find the solution, a solution the angel is conveniently about to provide. And this is where a truly bizarre, specific instruction is given, a detail that you dutifully record. The angel declares that the original shoe stone, the black obsidian sphere you have carried all this way from Mortlake, is now contaminated. It has absorbed too much doubt, too much human imperfection. The work cannot continue with it. You require a new vessel, a perfect crystal, one of a specific size and clarity that the angel describes in detail. The subtext is clear: the fault lies not just in you, but in your equipment, and it will require a further, significant investment from your patron to fix it. Historians are endlessly fascinated by this moment. Was Kelly cornered and desperate, creating an elaborate excuse for his lack of results? A brilliant improvisation to buy more time and resources? Or was he in the grip of a genuine psychological breakdown, his own immense stress and feelings of failure being projected onto the angel, which then proceeded to flagellate everyone, himself included. The question of whether this was conscious manipulation or a subconscious cry for help remains one of the most debated aspects of your story. The session ends with a final, terrible warning. You have one last chance to purify your souls. One last chance to prove your worth. If you fail again, the gates of heaven will be sealed to you forever. You will be abandoned. Kelly slumps in his chair, seemingly spent and shaking, the very picture of a man savaged by a divine force. Rosenberg is silent, his face pale and troubled. And you are paralyzed. You have been checkmated. Every logical escape route is blocked. To argue is to prove your doubt. To retreat is to accept eternal failure. You are being told that the only way forward is to double down on your belief, to silence your reason, and to obey even more completely. And its steel jaws are closing in. The weeks following the angel's terrifying warnings are a blur of fasting, prayer, and forced, humiliating confessions. The atmosphere in the castle at Trebin is thick with a dreadful, pious solemnity. You and Kelly are shadows of your former selves, gaunt and hollow-eyed from the prescribed spiritual exertions. You have confessed every doubt, exposed every secret resentment. You feel scoured, emptied, and utterly broken. The process has achieved its aim. You are too exhausted to fight, too spiritually battered to resist. Just as you reach this point of complete submission, Kelly delivers his masterstroke. He comes to you one morning, his face a mask of grim resolve. He looks not like a charlatan, but like a man burdened by a terrible unholy duty. I can go on no longer, Doctor, he says, his voice heavy. The work is too great, the spiritual peril is too immense, and your doubt it lingers. It poisons the well. I cannot see clearly while it remains. He tells you he intends to leave. He will abandon the partnership, abandon the patronage of Rosenberg, and seek his fortune alone. He will take his family and disappear, leaving you with your books, your incomprehensible angelic diaries, and your ruined reputation. The threat is devastating. For all your suspicions, for all the misery of the past months, Kelly is still the bedrock of your entire world. He is your esquire. He is your key. Without him, you have nothing. The prospect of being abandoned in Bohemia, a frail old man with a family to support and no prospects, is a vision of absolute ruin. It is the abyss you have been dreading. What can I do, you plead, the desperation raw in your voice. I had done everything the angels have asked. I have prayed. I have prayed. I have fasted. I have confessed. What more can I possibly do to prove my faith? Kelly lets the question hang in the air, his gaze intense and unwavering. He is not just an opportunist anymore in this moment. He is a brilliant, ruthless psychologist. He understands that a drowning man will grasp at any hand, no matter the cost. It is not about doing, Doctor, he says slowly. It is about absolute, unconditional trust, not just in the angels but in the vessel they have chosen, in me. He lays out his terms. From this moment on, you are to ask no more questions. You are to accept every vision, every angelic pronouncement as unvarnished divine truth. You are to surrender your scholarly skepticism completely. Your reason, he tells you, is the final barrier, the last bastion of pride that must be torn down. This is Kelly's ultimatum. It is the culmination of years of slowly escalating control. He has pushed and prodded, gradually eroding your authority and confidence, and now he is making his final move for total dominance of the partnership. Historians see this as a pivotal moment, the point where the dynamic is laid bare. Kelly is no longer hiding behind the angels. He is stating in plain terms that obedience to him. The two are inseparable. The debate rages: was this a calculated power play by a master manipulator, cornering his victim? Or was Kelly himself so deep in his own delusion that he genuinely believed he was the chosen vessel, and that your skepticism was a spiritual contaminant that had to be eradicated for the good of the mission? Perhaps he believed that by forcing your absolute faith, he could in turn make his own visions more powerful and real. The choice you face is start cling to the last remnants of your intellectual integrity and face utter ruin, or surrender your mind to save your mission. It's a devil's bargain. You look at Kelly, at his intense, burning eyes, and you see the gravity of the situation. He is not bluffing. The years of shared struggle, the families, the secrets, it has all led to this. He is holding the entire enterprise hostage, and the ransom is your soul. With a heart heavy with resignation, you capitulate. The fight has gone out of you. I will, you whisper, the words tasting like ash in your mouth. I will trust. For several weeks an uneasy truce settles over the castle at Trebon. You have agreed to Kelly's terms, silencing the scholar within you and striving to become a vessel of pure, unquestioning faith. The angelic sessions resume, and the tone for a time becomes calmer, more instructional. It feels like a brief respite, a lull in the storm. You cling to the hope that your total submission has finally purified the work. The peace, however, is a fragile and deeply deceptive one. It is the quiet before the final, most devastating thunderclap. The command comes on a spring day in 1587. You, Kelly, and your respective wives, Jane and Joan, are all instructed to be present for the action. This in itself is unusual. The angels have not demanded the presence of the women for a major theological pronouncement before. A sense of nervous anticipation fills the room. Kelly enters his trance. His breathing becomes deep and regular. When he speaks, it is with the voice of Mad I am I, the spirit child. But her tone is not petulant or playful. It is flat, solemn, and devoid of any emotion. She begins by speaking of the nature of creation, of how all things are shared in the eyes of God. She talks of the base, earthly concept of ownership as a sin of pride. You listen, transcribing diligently, trying to follow the theological argument. It seems abstract, philosophical. You have no idea where it is leading. Then, the message begins to narrow, its focus sharpening like the point of a spear. You have been chosen to be the exemplars of this new understanding. Mad I am, I says through Kelly. You must cast off the chains of worldly custom and mortal attachment. All that you have must be held in common. A knot of dread tightens in your stomach. You have a terrible premonition. Mad I am, I continues, her voice unwavering. You have shared your knowledge. You have shared your bread. You have shared your prayers. But one final barrier of selfishness remains. One final obstacle of fleshly pride. The silence in the room is absolute. You can hear the sound of your own heartbeat. Jane and Joan are motionless, their faces pale. And then the angel delivers the most astonishing and shocking command of your entire journey. The Lord who gave you all has commanded this. As a sign of your perfect faith and your rejection of earthly sin, you must share all things in common. And this includes the cross-matching of your wives. The words hang in the air, obscene and unbelievable. You stop writing. Your quill hovers over the page, a drop of ink swelling as its dip. You look up at Kelly, whose eyes are closed, his face a serene mask. You look at Jane. Her face is a study in horror and disbelief. Her hand has flown to her mouth. You look at Joan Kelly, who sits frozen, her expression unreadable. This is it, the command to swap wives. It is so far beyond the bounds of religious piety, so contrary to every moral and social law you have lived by, that it feels like a declaration of war on reality itself. Your mind reels, searching for an escape. This cannot be from God. This must be a trick. A test. A temptation from a demon masquerading as an angel. You open your mouth to say so, to voice the outrage and disgust that is churning within you. But Kelly, or Mad I am I, anticipates you. Do you doubt? The voice asks, a cold edge of the old menace returning. Do you dare to apply your filthy, mortal morality to a command from the throne of God? Do you think the Lord is bound by your petty rules of marriage? This is the ultimate test of your obedience. To refuse is to fail. To refuse is to prove that you love your wives, your property, more than you love God. To refuse is to be damned. This is the divine checkmate. The logic is twisted, but within the terrifying framework you have been forced to accept, it is flawless. They have pushed the demand for faith over reason to its most grotesque and personal conclusion. To object on moral grounds is to prove you are still trapped in the spitter bear of pride. To defend your wife's honor is to commit an act of spiritual rebellion. Historians and psychologists have a field day with this moment. Some say it is the ultimate expression of Kelly's socio-perfect control, a desire to violate the last boundary and possess what was yours, including your wife. Others suggest a more complex motive. Could Kelly have been trying to deliberately sabotage the partnership, issuing a command so outrageous that you would have no choice but to reject it, giving him the perfect excuse to leave? A more fringe theory even speculates about the desires of the women, though there is no historical evidence to support it. But the most common interpretation is that this was the endgame of a long psychological campaign, the final, absolute assertion of power by a manipulator over his victim. You are speechless. The room is a vortex of shock, fear, and silent accusation. The sacred quest that began with a prayerful search for knowledge in your London study has led you to this. To a darkened room in Bohemia, where an angel is commanding you to participate in a divinely ordained wife-swapping pact. The absurdity and the horror of it are so immense that they are almost paralyzing. The angel's command echoes in the suffocating silence of the room. Your world, which has been tilting on its axis for years, has finally shattered. This is not a test of faith, it is a violation. It is a blasphemy wrapped in the language of piety. Every fiber of your being, every principle you have held dear as a scholar, a Christian, a husband, and a father, screams in protest. You look at Kelly. He remains still, the placid vessel for this monstrous decree. Is this his desire? Is this his desire? Is this a twisted, lecherous fantasy born in his own mind and projected onto the shoe stone? Or is he too a victim, forced to channel a message that horrifies him? You search his face for a flicker of deceit, a crack in the facade, but find nothing. He is maddeningly serene. Then your eyes find Jane. The look on her face is one of pure, unadulterated horror. Her eyes are wide, swimming with tears of betrayal and fear. This is the woman you swore to love and protect. She has followed you across a continent, endured your obsessions, raised your children in the shadow of this strange work, and her reward is to be treated as chattel, a piece of property to be exchanged as a sign of your faith. In her eyes, you see the full weight of your failure. You have not protected her. You have led her into this nightmare. For days, your mind is a raging tempest. You lock yourself in your study not for scrying, but for desperate, agonizing prayer. You plead with God for a sign, for clarity. Lord, deliver me from this, you pray, tears streaming down your face into your white beard. Is this truly your will? Or is it a temptation from the adversary, sent to destroy my soul? You scour the Bible, your hands shaking, searching for any precedent, any justification. You find none. You find only condemnations of adultery, celebrations of the sanctity of marriage. The command is a direct contradiction of the Holy Scripture you have dedicated your life to understanding. You try to reason your way out of the trap. You write pages and pages in your diary, arguing with the absent angel. You draft logical proofs demonstrating the immorality and irrationality of the command. Premise 1: God is good and cannot command evil. Premise 2: adultery is evil. Conclusion: therefore, the command to commit adultery cannot be from God. It is the clear, cold logic of your Cambridge education, the reasoning of the man you used to be. But it feels useless now. You have already agreed that your reason is flawed and that faith must supersede it. Kelly has trapped you in a prison of your own making. Every argument you formulate is just more evidence of your sinful doubt. The internal conflict is a physical torment. You cannot sleep. You cannot sleep. You are haunted by the choice before you. If you obey, you betray your wife, your morality, your God as you have always understood him. You commit a sin that you believe will stain your soul for eternity. You will destroy your family and your own self-respect. If you refuse, you betray the entire mission. You prove yourself a faithless servant. The angels will abandon you. Kelly will leave. Your patron, Rosenberg, will cast you out. You and your family will be destitute, stranded in a foreign land, with nothing to show for your years of sacrifice but a collection of heretical notes. You will be a laughingstock. The great drive. D, who was duped for years and then failed the final test. Your pride, which has already been so battered, cannot bear the thought of this ultimate humiliation. The debate among historians about your state of mind at this moment is intense. Were you genuinely considering it, weighing the spiritual command against the moral law? Or were you simply in a state of shock, your mind paralyzed by the horror of the situation? Your diary from this period is a raw, painful document. It is the record of a man in the midst of a complete breakdown, his intellect warring with his imposed faith, his love for his family warring with his fear of damnation and ruin. You confront Kelly directly, away from the charged atmosphere of the seance. You plead with him. "Edward, this cannot be. Reconsider. Ask the angels again. There must be a mistake, a misinterpretation." Kelly's response is cold and absolute. He is no longer your partner, he is the enforcer of heaven's will. The message was clear, Doctor. It is not for us to question. It is for us to obey. Do you fear the judgment of man more than the judgment of God? Your hesitation is an insult to him. He frames your moral revulsion as cowardice. You are utterly alone. You have alienated your wife with your obsession. You are manipulated by your partner. You are a pawn of your patron. And you believe you are being tormented by God himself. The storm inside you rages, tearing you apart. Every path leads to a different kind of destruction. One is the destruction of your soul, the other, the destruction of your entire life's work and worldly existence. The choice is impossible, and the angels, or Kelly, are waiting for your answer. While you are lost in your tempest of theological and moral turmoil, two figures in this drama have been relegated to the background: your wife, Jane, and Kelly's wife, Joan. The angelic command was about them, but not for them. They were the subjects of the divine sentence, not its recipients. Not its recipients. They were not asked, they were told. Their voices, largely silent in the historical record, become the agonizing, unspoken heart of the matter. After the initial shock of the pronouncement, Jane withdraws into a state of terrified, stony silence. The bond of trust between you, already frayed thin by years of neglect and obsession, is now severed completely. She looks at you with eyes that hold a mixture of pity, contempt, and utter betrayal. You, her husband, her protector, the learned doctor she once admired, are now the man entertaining this monstrous proposition. You are the one praying and debating, as if this were a legitimate theological problem to be solved, instead of an immediate and absolute evil to be rejected. In the small, private moments away from your frantic prayers, she likely confronts you. We don't have a transcript, but we can imagine the scene. Her voice no longer gentle, but sharp with the clarity of a person pushed beyond her limit. "You would even consider this, John. You would consider handing me over to that man like a sack of grain." She might have whispered, her voice trembling with rage. For what? For the whispers of a charlatan staring into a rock. Where is your God in this? Where is your honor? Where is the man I married? Her questions are not about theology, love, and basic human decency. They are questions you cannot answer without exposing the depths of your own weakness and fear. To her, this isn't complicated. It is simple. A good man, a man of God, would have stood up, denounced Kelly as a devil, and walked away, consequences be damned. Your hesitation, your struggle, is in itself a profound betrayal. What of Joan Kelly? Her situation is even more complex and opaque to history. She is married to the man who channeled the message. Did she believe her husband was truly speaking for God? Or did she see this as just another one of his cruel, unpredictable schemes? Her life with Kelly was reportedly volatile. Was she too frightened of him to protest? Or was she so worn down by his behavior that she was resigned to her fate? The dynamic between the two women in these horrifying days is a subject of much speculation. Did they find a grim solidarity in their shared predicament? Did they meet in secret, in a quiet corner of the castle gardens, to whisper their fears and outrage? Or were they kept apart, isolated by their husbands and the suffocating tension? There is a powerful, albeit debated, historical interpretation that Jane D. was the one who ultimately forced the issue. While you were wrestling with angels and demons in your study, she was dealing with the terrifying, practical reality. She saw the true nature of the choice more clearly than you did. She knew that any path that began with this act would lead to utter moral ruin. One small, poignant detail that some historians point to is the fact that you and Jane had recently had a new baby. The idea of this cross-matching was not just an attack on your marital bond, but on the very fabric of your family, on the sanctity of her role as a mother. This may have been the final straw that galvanized her from a state of passive suffering into one of an active resistance. Imagine Jane and Joan meeting in a hallway. They don't need to speak. A single look would convey everything: the shared horror, the fear, the helplessness. They are the true victims in this psychological drama, their bodies and their agency treated as mere instruments for the spiritual ambitions and neuroses of the men who controlled their lives. Their silence in your diaries is deafening. You record the angelic words, you record your own prayers, you record your arguments with Kelly, but the thoughts and feelings of your own wife are largely absent, reduced to a footnote in your great spiritual crisis. You note that she is disquieted or weeping, but you seem incapable of truly centering her humanity in the crisis. For you, this is a vertical problem, between you and God. For her, it is a horizontal one, between you and her, and you are failing utterly. The two women are the silent conscience of the story. While you and Kelly are lost in a world of symbols and spirits, they are grounded in the brutal reality of the command. Their fear, their tears, and their presumed outrage from a silent, damning judgment on the entire holy mission. The days of agonizing indecision bleed into one another until you can bear it no longer. The pressure from Kelly is relentless. The warnings from the angels of eternal damnation echo in your ears. Your fear of worldly ruin wars with your fear of spiritual sin until your mind is a battlefield of exhaustion. In the end, something within you breaks. You surrender. You justify it to yourself as the ultimate act of faith, the sacrifice of Abraham. You tell yourself that God is testing you, pushing you to the very limit of your obedience, and to refuse is to fail. You rationalize that your mortal understanding of right and wrong is meaningless in the face of a divine command. You choose what you perceive to be your duty to God over your duty to your wife and your own conscience. It is the most catastrophic moral decision of your life. On the 29th of May, 1587, you formalized the agreement. You, Edward Kelly, Jane, and Joan gather. You, a man who loves legalistic precision, draft a solemn covenant. You write it out in your diary. A formal, almost bureaucratic record of this deeply personal and spiritual violation. The document states that you are acting on the direct and explicit command of God, and that you enter into this pact in perfect charity and simplicity of soul. You all sign it. What must it have been like for Jane and Joan to put their names to such a document? The historical record is silent on their demeanor, but one can only imagine the mixture of coercion, fear, and resignation. The night the pact is to be fulfilled is a scene of immense psychological horror. The act itself is not described in your diaries, which are famously or infamously discreet on the matter. You simply note that the covenant was acted upon. But we can imagine the atmosphere. It is not an act of passion or desire. It is a sterile, ritualistic performance, heavy with the weight of transgression and spiritual anxiety. It is a religious rite stripped of all divinity, leaving only the cold, mechanical act of obedience. You pray for forgiveness even as you commit the act you believe to be a sin. The cognitive dissonance is overwhelming. You are simultaneously the pious servant of God and the betrayer of his laws. You have to believe that the command makes the act holy, but your soul screams that it is a profanity. What of Kelly in this moment? Is it a moment of triumph for him? The ultimate act of domination over you, the older, more respected scholar? Or is he too caught in the grip of this strange compulsion, driven by forces even he doesn't fully understand? Does he feel guilt or satisfaction? Or perhaps nothing at all? His inner world remains the great enigma of the story. And the women. Jane, your wife, forced to submit to a man she despises, not by force of arms, but by the weight of your spiritual authority and her own powerlessness. Joan Kelly, handed over to you, the aging scholar who is her husband's strange and codependent partner. The emotional and psychological toll on them is immeasurable and largely unrecorded. This night will become a wound that will never heal, a source of trauma that will haunt the rest of their life. In the immediate aftermath, there is no sense of relief, no feeling of having passed a great spiritual test. There is only a profound and sickening emptiness. The air in the castle at Trebon feels heavy, polluted. The bond that held the four of you together a strange, toxic mix of faith, ambition, and dependence is now irrevocably poisoned. You thought this act of ultimate obedience would purify the work and bring you closer to God. Instead, it has plunged you all into a silent, personal hell. Historians debate the long-term consequences of this night. Some see it as the definitive end of any real spiritual communication, the point where the project became entirely a matter of human pathology. If there ever were angels, they were surely silent now. Others view the entire episode through a psychological lens, as a textbook case of a folia duo shared madness spiraling into a folia quarter, drawing the unwilling wives into its vortex. You lie awake that night, the weight of what you have done pressing down on you. You have not found spiritual ecstasy or divine union. You have found only shame, guilt, and a terrifying, echoing silence where you had once hoped to hear the voice of God. You have sacrificed your morality on the altar of faith, and the only reward is a profound and soul-crushing sense of defilement. The pact has been fulfilled, but instead of ushering in a new age of enlightenment, it has simply sealed your doom. The morning after the covenant is fulfilled, the sun rises on a changed world. The act, intended to bind you all together in a new state of spiritual purity, does the exact opposite. It shatters the last fragile remnants of your partnership and plunges the two families into a state of cold, silent hostility. The unnatural intimacy of the night before has created an unbridgeable chasm. There is no more talk of shared purpose or divine mission. The pretense is gone. When you pass Kelly in the hallways of Trebon Castle, you can barely meet his eyes. What is there to say? The shared transgression hangs between you, a toxic, unspoken secret. The relationship, which was already a complex web of dependence, suspicion, and intellectual rivalry, is now layered with a profound and personal violation. He is no longer just your difficult partner. He is the man who, by divine or diabolical means, has shared your wife, and you his. The intimacy has bred only contempt. The effect on Jane is devastating. She is a ghost in her own life, moving through her days with a mechanical listlessness. The silence between you is no longer just about your obsession with the angels. It is a silence born of a deep and unforgivable wound. You have failed in your most fundamental duty as a husband. You try to speak to her, to explain, to apologize, but your words are meaningless. How can you apologize for an act you justified as the will of God? Any apology is an admission that you were wrong, that you sacrificed her for a delusion, a truth too terrible for you to fully confront. A poignant and heartbreaking detail emerges from your diary shortly after this event. Jane becomes pregnant, and for a time, there is an agonizing uncertainty about the paternity of the child. You, a man obsessed with precision and certainty, are plunged into the most personal and primal of doubts. You even ask the angels or Kelly about it during a séance. The angel, conveniently, declares the child to be yours. Whether this was a genuine angelic pronouncement, or Kelly absolving himself of responsibility, or simply a lucky guess, is impossible to know. But the fact that the question even had to be asked is a testament to the chaos and misery the pact has wrought. The child, who would be named Theodore, is born into this web of confusion and shame. The work, which this entire Sordian affair was meant to sanctify, grinds to a halt. How can you sit in a room with Kelly and pretend to be receiving wisdom from heaven? The hypocrisy is too much to bear, even for you. The shoestone lies dormant. The angelic conversations cease. The great project, the quest for the language of God, dies not with a bang, but with a sordid, shameful whimper. Your patron, Rosenberg, is likely kept in the dark about the specifics of the cross-matching, but he can feel the poisonous atmosphere. He sees the project has stalled, that his two mystics are barely on speaking terms. His investment has yielded nothing but discord. His patience, already worn thin, finally snaps. The patronage that was your gilded cage is withdrawn. The world after the pact is a landscape of ruins. Your relationship with Kelly is destroyed, crippled by a shared act of profanity. Your marriage is a hollow shell, held together only by circumstance and the needs of your children. Your spiritual quest is dead, tainted by its grotesque conclusion. And your financial security is gone. You are left with nothing but the consequences. The great secret that once bound you and Kelly together, the secret of the angels, has been replaced by a new, uglier secret. The trust, the ambition, the hope, it has all been burned away, leaving only the cold ashes of shame and regret. The rupture is inevitable. The shared transgression of the pact has made any continuation of your partnership impossible. The silence between you and Kelly hardens into a final, icy resolve. There are no dramatic confrontations or tearful farewells. The end comes quietly, a slow and bitter dissolution born of mutual disgust and exhaustion. The official reason for the split is a disagreement over the future of the work. You, clinging to the last shreds of your original purpose, want to analyze the vast amounts of angelic material you have gathered. You want to retreat into scholarship to make sense of the past decade, perhaps to salvage some meaning from the wreckage. Kelly has no interest in this. For him, the past is a liability. His eyes are fixed on a much more tangible prize, gold. He has managed to ingratiate himself fully with the bohemian nobility. While your reputation has been that of a pious if eccentric scholar, Kelly has cultivated the image of a master alchemist. He has convinced a circle of powerful men, including Emperor Rudolph I himself, that he is on the verge of discovering the secret of transmutation. The Emperor, who had kept you at arm's length, is now captivated by Kelly. He summons Kelly back to Prague, away from Rosenberg's castle, offering him titles, estates, and a lavishly equipped laboratory. He wants results, and he believes Kelly, not you, can provide them. The final parting of ways is a stark illustration of your divergent paths. Kelly sheds his role as a spiritual medium as easily as a snake sheds its skin. The angels, the shoe stone, the Enochian language, they have served their purpose. They were the ladder he used to climb into the world of high-stakes alchemy, and now he kicks it away. He reverenced himself as Sir Edward Kelly, a knight and counselor to the Holy Roman Emperor, a man of science and substance. You, on the other hand, are left with the ladder. You are left with the diaries, the tables of angelic script, the records of a failed spiritual quest. While Kelly strides toward a future of worldly power and influence, you are left to sift through the ashes of your shared past. There is a deep and bitter irony in this. You, the established scholar, the man with the royal connections and the vast library, are left adrift. Kelly, the obscure, possibly criminal figure you took under your wing, has usurped your position. He has achieved the kind of wealth and status you once enjoyed, and he has done it using the very tools and the legitimacy you provided him. You are the platform. He was the rocket that launched from it, leaving you behind in a cloud of smoke. Historians have long debated the final conversation between you two. Did you accuse him of being a fraud from the start? Or was the end more pathetic, a quiet acknowledgement that the shared delusion could no longer be sustained? Your diaries are circumspect, noting only that you agreed to go your separate ways in early 1588. Kelly was to pursue his alchemical work in Prague, and you were free to return to England. You watch him go, this man who has dominated your life for the better part of a decade. He is the architect of your greatest hopes and your most profound despair. He was your window to God and the agent of your moral destruction. The relationship was a strange, toxic cocktail of dependence, genius, manipulation, and possibly genuine supernatural phenomena. The question of what was real and what was performance will haunt you for the rest of your days. Was he a master con man, a troubled soul with genuine psychic gifts? A man who started as a fraud and came to believe his own lies? You will never have a definitive answer. The partnership that began with a hopeful prayer in your study at Mortlake ends in a silent, bitter divorce in a Bohemian castle. One of you walks away towards riches and knighthood. The other is left to pack up his strange, useless treasures, the diaries filled with the language of angels, and begin the long, lonely journey home. The journey back to England is a long and melancholy retreat. In 1589, after years in exile, you finally set foot on English soil once more. You are now in your early 60s, an old man by the standards of the time. The fire of ambition that drove you across Europe has been extinguished, replaced by a weary sense of failure and a deep longing for the quiet solitude of your library at Mortlake. But the England you return to is not the one you left. The political winds have shifted. Your great protector, Queen Elizabeth is in the twilight of her reign. Her court is dominated by a new generation of younger, more pragmatic, and more cynical men. Your old friends and patrons have died or fallen from favor. The world has moved on without you. Worse, your reputation is in tatters. The stories of your adventures on the continent have preceded you, but they have been twisted and distorted in the telling. You are no longer seen as the Queen's trusted advisor and a brilliant man of science. You are the conjurer, a figure of ridicule and suspicion. The tales of your angelic conversations, your alchemical pursuits, and, most damningly, your association with the now infamous Edward Kelly have painted you as a fool at best, and a dangerous necromancer at worst. When you arrive at your beloved home at Mortlake, you find a scene of devastation. During your long absence, the mob you once feared has done its work. Egged on by your rivals, they broke into your home. Your precious library, the greatest private collection in England, has been ransacked. Thousands of your books have been stolen, your scientific instruments smashed, your personal papers scattered and burned. It is a physical manifestation of your life's ruin. The sanctuary you yearned for has been violated and destroyed. You try to pick up the pieces. You petition the Queen for help. She receives you perhaps out of a sense of nostalgia or pity for her old philosopher. She is not unkind, but she is distant. The old intimacy is gone. She cannot risk her own reputation by being too closely associated with you now. She grants you a small, inadequate pension and offers you a minor position as the warden of Christ's College in Manchester. It is a form of respectable exile, a way to put you out of sight and out of mind. The wardenship in Manchester is a miserable experience. It is a far cry from the intellectual heart of London or the high-stakes world of European courts. You are surrounded by quarrelsome academics who resent your appointment and view you with suspicion. You are a lonely, isolated figure, a relic from a bygone era. Your great knowledge of mathematics, navigation, and philosophy is of little interest to them. They only know the rumors that follow you. During this time you try to find solace in your work. You begin the monumental task of trying to reassemble your scattered library and, more importantly, to make sense of your angelic diaries. You spend countless hours poring over the records of your time with Kelly. You are a man trying to solve the riddle of his own life. You attempt to organize the Enochian language, to write a formal grammar, to translate the angelic keys. There is a deep pathos in this image you, in your cold, damp rooms in Manchester, trying to find divine order in the very documents that record your own downfall. Are you still a believer? It's a question historians continue to debate. Perhaps you believe that the core of the revelations was divine, but that it was corrupted by Kelly's flawed character. Or perhaps, in the quiet of your lonely study, you finally have to confront the devastating possibility, but it was all a lie, that your life's great work was based on the manipulations of a gifted charlatan. Your writings from this period are ambiguous, filled with a deep melancholy and a sense of spiritual confusion. You are a man out of time. The Elizabethan age of exploration and mystical inquiry is giving way to a more sober, scientific era. The world is less interested in talking to angels and more interested in building better telescopes. You have returned home, but you are more of an exile than ever before, haunted by the ghosts of your past and the spectre of your infamous partner, Edward Kelly. While you languish in your lonely exile in Manchester, news of Edward Kelly occasionally filters back to you, like reports from another world. His trajectory, which shot upwards so dramatically after he left you, proves to be as volatile and unstable as his personality. For a time, he lives a life of unbelievable luxury and fame in Prague. Emperor Rudolf II showers him with honors, granting him a knighthood, vast estates, and the kind of wealth you only ever dreamed of. The celebrated alchemist, a major figure at the imperial court. He has everything he ever wanted: money, status, and the freedom to pursue his alchemical obsessions without your troublesome questions or moralizing. He builds a grand laboratory and surrounds himself with assistants and sycophants. He promises the emperor that he is on the very brink of perfecting the process of transmutation, that he will soon be able to produce gold in vast quantities, enough to solve the empire's financial woes. But Kelly's fatal flaw has always been his inability to deliver on his grandest promises. He is a master of seduction, but not of execution. The months, and then years tick by, and the imperial treasury sees no new influx of alchemical gold. The experiments are always on the verge of success, always just one more expensive ingredient away from the final breakthrough. Emperor Rudolph, for all his eccentricities, is not a fool. His patience begins to wear thin. He has invested a fortune in Kelly, and his own credibility is on the line. The pressure on Kelly becomes immense. Unlike you, he no longer has an angelic voice to blame for his failures. The responsibility isn't his alone. His arrogance, which was once seen as the confidence of a genius, begins to be perceived as the bluster of a fraud. He makes powerful enemies at court, men who were jealous of his rapid rise and are now eager to see him fall. In 1591, the emperor's patience finally snaps. Accusing Kelly of failing to deliver on his promises and possibly of planning to flee with his secrets, Rudolph has him arrested and imprisoned in Ivo Kalok Castle, a grim fortress outside of Prague. The irony is savage. Kelly, who flew so high, is now caged. The man who promised to unlock the secrets of the universe cannot even unlock his own cell door. He remains imprisoned for several years. He writes desperate, pleading letters to you, of all people, begging you to use your influence with Queen Elizabeth to secure his release. It is a strange and pathetic final communication between you. You, the man he betrayed and abandoned, are now his last hope. There is little you can do, and likely little you are willing to do. The end of Edward Kelly's story is shrouded in legend, but the most widely accepted account is both dramatic and pathetic. In 1597, convinced he is about to be tortured for his secrets, he attempts a daring escape from his prison tower. He braids sheets together to make a rope, but he is not a young man anymore. The rope either breaks or is too short. He falls, shattering his leg. The injury is severe, and in the era's medical conditions, infection likely sets in. Some accounts claim he took his own life by poison shortly after the fall, preferring a quick end to a slow, agonizing one. And so the great Edward Kelly, the seer, the alchemist, the knight of the empire, dies a broken man in a Bohemian prison, a victim of his own spectacular lies. When the news of his demise reaches you in England, it must be a moment of profound and complex emotion. Is there a sense of vindication, of grim satisfaction that justice has been served? Or is there justice has been served? Or is there justice has been served? Or is there it all? And ultimately self-destructive man who was your partner in the greatest adventure and the greatest disaster of your life. His death marks the true and final end of the saga. The curtain has fallen on the strange and tragic play you starred in together for so long. The news of Kelly's ignominious end in a Bohemian prison is old news now. It has had years to settle in your mind, losing its sharp edges of shock and transforming into a dull, chronic ache of memory. With his death, the final living link to that frantic, consuming chapter of your life is severed. You are now the sole custodian of the story, the only one left who knows the full weight of the secrets transcribed in your diaries. The death of Queen Elizabeth in 1603 marked the true end of your public life. The new king, James I, is a man with a morbid and famous air of witchcraft and all forms of magical practice. For a man with your reputation, the court of King James is a dangerous place. Your wardenship in Manchester, already a misery, becomes untenable. And so, in your late 70s, you make your final journey. Your home is no longer the bustling center of inquiry it once was. It is a quiet, decaying house, a hospice for your own memory. Your wife, Jane, the long-suffering companion of your strange odyssey, has passed away. Her death has left a silence in the house that even the ghosts of angels cannot fill. Your children are grown and have lives of their own, visiting you now, as one would a monument from a past age. You are old, impoverished, and largely alone, surrounded by the wreckage of your library and the far heavier wreckage of your past. Your days are structured by a simple, obsessive routine. You rise, you pray, you eat a meager meal, and then you sit at your great oak desk. The folios containing the angelic conversations are your only real companions now. They are all that is left. You run your gnarled fingers over the brittle pages, the paper crackling under your touch. Your own neat, scholarly Latin script fills the margins, a testament to your initial discipline and faith. And beside it, the strange, elegant, alien geometry of the Enochian alphabet. And you reflect, what was it all for? What was it, really? Some days, as the weak sunlight filters through the dusty windows of your study, you can almost feel it again. You look at the complex tables, the 48 Enochian keys, and you see a divine pattern, a sublime and beautiful architecture that no mortal mind, certainly not the disordered mind of Edward Kelly, could have possibly. In those moments you believe. You believe that you truly were on the cusp of a divine revelation, that you spoke with God's messengers, but that the mission was corrupted by the weakness of its human instruments, Kelly's greed and your own intellectual pride. On other days, darker days, you see only the fraud. You see the convenient timing of the angelic pronouncements. You see the self-serving prophecies, the masterful psychological manipulation. You hear not the voice of the angel mad, I am I, but the echoes of Kelly's own cunning, his petulance, his desires. You see the entire decade as a colossal, tragic waste, a monument to your own gullibility. You see the face of the man who ruined you, smiling out from behind every celestial word. This is the great, unresolved question that will follow you to your grave, and it's the question that historians will debate for centuries to come. In the quiet of a Tuesday afternoon, did you see the hand of God in these pages? And on a cold Friday morning, did you see only the smirking face of Edward Kelly? The truth is, you probably see both, a shimmering, uncertain image, like a reflection in a dark mirror. In your loneliness, you even make a few pathetic attempts to rekindle the flame. This is a sad, little-known fact of your final years. You try to scry again. You sit with the shoe stone, the original obsidian or the new crystal you acquired in Europe, and you stare into its depths, hoping for a sign. You even try to train your own son, Arthur, to be your new seer. He was a boy during the great adventure, surely some of the sight rubbed off on him. But Arthur, a more grounded and perhaps less imaginative man, sits before the stone and sees nothing. Just a reflection of a sad old man, his father, hoping for a miracle that will not come. The silence from the stone is different now than it was in the beginning. It is not a silence pregnant with possibility. It is an empty, final silence. Despite your poverty and isolation, you never stop being a scholar. You write petitions to the king, trying to clear your name and secure your legacy. You want to be remembered not as a conjurer, but as the mathematician who advised the navigators of England, the philosopher who owned the greatest library of his time. You fight against the caricature you have become, but go straddling around in the cage of your own legend. But mostly use it with the diaries. You are the sole inhabitant of a lost world. You trace the angelic letter with a trembling finger, whispering the strange, guttural words of the Enochian keys. In the end, what are you left with? A new language that no one else can speak. A direct line to heaven that no one else can hear. A secret history of the universe that no one will ever believe. You are the keeper of a truth, or a lie, of such magnitude that it is, in the end, functionally the same as madness, and you are utterly, profoundly alone with it. The final years of your life are a slow, quiet fade to grey. The world outside your decaying house at Mortlake continues its relentless march forward. The vibrant, volatile Elizabethan era is a distant memory, and the new Jacobean age has no place for a figure like you. You are a living fossil, a reminder of a time when the world felt more enchanted, more mysterious, and more dangerous. You sell off your possessions, piece by piece, to survive. A cherished book here, a remaining astronomical instrument there. The great library that was once your pride and joy is now just a source of firewood and food. Your final days are marked by a deep and abiding poverty. You, who once advised the Queen and conversed with emperors, are now reduced to writing pleading letters for a pension that barely covers your daily bread. Your health fails. Gout and other ailments of old age confine you to your chair, your world shrinking to the dimensions of a single room. Your study, it is here that you will face the end, surrounded by the silent witnesses of your life's journey, the few remaining books, the cryptic diaries, the inert and useless shoe stone. In these last moments, what do you think of? Do you think of the courts and the castles, the praise of princes and the promises of angels? Or do you think of the human cost? Do you see the face of your wife, Jane, her eyes filled with a pain you could never truly soothe? Do you think of the children you raised in the shadow of this grand, terrifying obsession? Do you think of Edward Kelly, not as the angel-tongued seer or the treacherous villain, but as the strange, broken man who was your other half, the partner in it doubts that spun you both into ruin? The historical record of your death, like so much of your life, is clouded with a bit of mystery and legend. You die in the winter of 1608 or early 1609. The exact date is uncertain. You are over 80 years old, a remarkable age for the period. You pass away quietly in your chair. In your chair, in your chair, in your chair, in your study. A simple, anticlimactic end to a life of such extraordinary drama. But what happens to your legacy? For a time it seems destined for oblivion. You are buried in the local churchyard at Mortlake, your grave likely unmarked. Your remaining possessions are scattered, and your angelic diaries, the coded records of your life's great secret, fall into obscurity. They are passed down through various hands, seen as little more than the bizarre curiosities of a half-mad old scholar. It is here that your story takes its final, strange twist. Decades later, these diaries are discovered by antiquarians and scholars. They are not dismissed. They are studied. The sheer volume of the material, the meticulous detail, the internal consistency of the Enochian language, it all fascinates a new generation. They see not just the ravings of a madman, but a system of immense complexity and intellectual rigor. Your diaries become your true monument. They ensure your name is never forgotten. But they also forever bind you to Edward Kelly and the angelic conversations. You had hoped to be remembered as a great scientist and mathematician, but history, with its love for a good story, has other plans. You are remembered as the Queen Sorcerer, the man who spoke to angels. The academic world continues to wrestle with you. Were you a pioneer of spiritualism, a man ahead of his time? A brilliant but deeply credulous scholar taken for the ride of his life by a master manipulator? Was the Enochian language a genuine glossolalia, a divinely inspired utterance, or the most elaborated? The debate is the lifeblood of your legacy. You are a paradox, a man of faith and reason, a genius and a fool, a seeker and a victim. You are a mirror in which subsequent ages see their own struggles between science and belief, skepticism and faith. Your story doesn't end with a neat conclusion. It ends with a question mark. You sit in your chair, the last breath leaving your body. The fire in the hearth dies down. The house at Mortlake falls silent. But the whispers you recorded in your diaries have just begun their long journey into the future, destined to echo in the minds of scholars, mystics, and storytellers for centuries to come, a permanent and unsolvable enigma. The story is over now. The echoes of your long and troubled life have faded, settling like dust in the quiet corners of the past. The frantic energy of the quest, the terror of the final command, the lonely ache of your last years, it all softens, blurring at the edges. Let the weight of it all drift away. Feel the grip of your choices loosen, the burden of your legacy become light as a feather. You are no other scholar, no longer the seer, no longer the man torn between heaven and earth. You are just a quiet presence, floating in the gentle current of sleep. The scratching of your quill has stopped. The insistent voices from the stone are silent. There is only a deep and profound stillness, a peace you sought for so long and perhaps only found at the very end. The candlelight in your study has finally gutted out, leaving a soft, velvety darkness. The chill of the Manchester nights and the oppressive heat of the Bohemian summer have given way to a perfect, temperate calm. The fears, the desperate prayers, they are all just murmurs now, distant and soft. Let them recede. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to prove, nothing left to decipher. All the complex codes have resolved into a single, simple note of rest. You can feel a gentle quiet enveloping you, a soft blanket of silence, tucking you in for a long and dreamless slumber. The journey is over. The end of the article. Good night.